3 days without a proper night's sleep had finally caught up with Owen Carter. The International Hospitality Conference hosted by his luxury hotel had brought together investors, executives, and industry leaders from around the world. For 72 hours, Owen had barely stopped moving. He supervised restaurant service, solved unexpected scheduling problems, covered missing staff, calmed demanding guests, and stayed long after every banquet ended to prepare for the next event. His co-workers joked that he ran on coffee and determination alone, but by the final afternoon, even determination had begun to fail him. Just as the conference officially ended, another problem appeared. A young banquet server named Liam suddenly collapsed while helping clean the ballroom. The exhaustion that everyone had ignored for days finally overwhelmed him. Without hesitation, Owen helped call an ambulance and insisted on accompanying the frightened employee to the hospital while another manager informed the hotel. "You don't have to stay," Liam murmured weakly from the stretcher. "I'm your supervisor," Owen replied with a tired smile. "That means I stay until someone else can." By the time Liam had been admitted for observation, nearly 2 more hours had passed. The emergency department remained busy, and Owen sat alone outside the treatment area, waiting for updates while answering messages from work. His uniform was still perfectly pressed despite the endless shift, though the dark circles beneath his eyes revealed how exhausted he truly was. His name badge still read simply, Owen Carter, restaurant supervisor. After another 20 minutes, a nurse informed him that Liam was stable but would need several more tests. Only then did Owen realize how badly he needed to sit somewhere quieter. The public waiting room was crowded with anxious families, crying children, ringing phones, and non-stop conversations. Looking farther down the hallway, he noticed another lounge with softer lighting and comfortable sofas. The door stood slightly open. There was no receptionist nearby, no obvious sign catching his attention, and in his exhausted state, he assumed it was simply another waiting area. He knocked gently before stepping inside. "I'm sorry," he said politely. "Is anyone using this room?" A man sitting near the window looked up. He appeared to be in his early 30s, wearing a navy suit that had clearly been expensive before several sleepless hours left it wrinkled. His tie had been loosened, and an untouched cup of coffee rested beside him. Despite looking equally tired, he carried himself with quiet composure. Parker Sullivan. He had been sitting in that private VIP family lounge for nearly 6 hours while surgeons operated on his father. For a brief moment, Parker glanced toward the sign beside the door. VIP Family Lounge. The stranger had obviously walked into the wrong room. He could have corrected him immediately. Instead, Parker looked back at the man standing awkwardly in the doorway. The hotel uniform, the name badge, the pale face, the unfocused eyes of someone who had gone far beyond ordinary fatigue. Parker simply answered, "Go ahead." "Thank you," Owen said with visible relief. He chose the sofa farthest away, carefully placing his phone beside him. "I'll only stay for a few minutes." Parker gave a small nod. "You don't need to explain." Owen intended to remain awake. He really did. He leaned back, closed his eyes for what felt like a single breath, and the next thing Parker knew, the stranger was completely asleep. Not pretending, not resting lightly, actually asleep. His shoulders finally relaxed, as if his body had been waiting for permission to stop. One hand still rested loosely over the phone he had been holding moments earlier. His breathing became slow and steady, and for the first time since entering the room, the tension disappeared from his face. Parker found himself staring longer than he expected. He had seen countless executives fall asleep in airport lounges or business meetings, but this felt different. There was something unexpectedly peaceful about the exhausted stranger sleeping without any fear, completely unaware that he had wandered into a private room occupied by someone he had never met. Most people would have been embarrassed to close their eyes around a stranger. This man had simply reached the limit of what his body could endure. Parker quietly picked up his own coffee and moved to the chair farther away, careful not to make unnecessary noise. The room became silent again. Outside, doctors and nurses continued moving through the corridors. Occasionally, footsteps passed the closed door, but neither man spoke. Nearly 40 minutes later, a surgeon entered briefly to tell Parker that Ethan's surgery was progressing well. Everything looked stable, though it would take another hour before they could finish. Relief spread through Parker's chest for the first time that day. As the doctor left, Parker glanced back toward the sofa. The stranger hadn't moved. He was still sleeping with the same peaceful expression. For reasons Parker couldn't explain, he smiled. It was only a small smile, but it was the first genuine one he had worn since bringing his father to the hospital that morning. Almost an hour passed before Owen stirred. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, and he blinked several times as though trying to remember where he was. Then his gaze landed on the unfamiliar room, the expensive furniture, and finally the man sitting quietly across from him. Everything came rushing back. Owen shot upright, so quickly that his phone slid off the sofa cushion. Oh no! He caught the phone before it hit the floor and immediately stood. I'm so sorry. The words came out almost automatically. I didn't mean to fall asleep. I was only going to sit down for a minute. Parker looked at him calmly. It's all right. No, it isn't. Owen rubbed a hand over his face, clearly mortified. I must have looked completely unprofessional. You looked exhausted. There was no judgment in Parker's voice, only a simple observation. Owen let out an embarrassed laugh. I suppose that's not much better. For the first time, Parker noticed the faint smile that appeared whenever Owen laughed at himself. It wasn't forced or loud. It simply softened the tired expression on his face. You work nearby? Parker asked. Owen glanced down at his uniform. Luxury Grand Hotel. The hospitality conference? You heard about it. My company had people attending. Owen nodded. That explains it. He hesitated before continuing. We just finished. 3 very long days. Parker could believe that. Even standing there, Owen looked as though another strong breeze might send him back onto the sofa. You should probably go home. I will. Owen smiled apologetically. As soon as I check on one of my staff members. Parker understood then. The young man hadn't come to the hospital for himself. He had come because someone working under him needed help. It was a small detail, but it stayed with him. A gentle knock interrupted the silence. The surgeon entered the room. Mr. Sullivan. Parker stood immediately. How was my father? The surgery went very well. For the first time that entire day, Parker exhaled completely. We've repaired the blockage successfully, the surgeon continued. He's stable now. He'll remain in recovery for a few hours before we move him to a private room. Thank you. No need to thank us yet. The next few days are important, but everything looks very encouraging. The doctor offered a reassuring smile before leaving again. Owen had remained respectfully quiet during the conversation. Only after the door closed did he speak. I'm glad your father is all right. Parker looked back at him. Thank you. I know waiting during surgery isn't easy. Something in Owen's voice suggested he understood more than he explained. Parker almost asked why. Instead, he simply nodded. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. They were still strangers. There seemed little reason to ask personal questions. Owen checked the time and sighed. I really should go. He bowed his head slightly. And, thank you again. You've apologized enough. I probably have. Another embarrassed smile. But I still feel terrible. Parker almost laughed. It was only a sofa. It was your sofa. Our sofa, apparently. That finally earned a genuine laugh from Owen. It wasn't loud, just warm enough to brighten the quiet room. I'll remember that. He picked up his phone, adjusted his slightly wrinkled uniform jacket, and walked toward the door. Halfway there, he suddenly stopped. 1 second. He searched through his pockets before finding a small notepad that hotel supervisors often carried for guest requests. Tearing off a clean sheet, he borrowed a pen lying on the coffee table. Parker watched curiously while Owen bent over the table, writing carefully for nearly a minute. Without saying another word, Owen folded the paper once and placed it beside the untouched coffee cup. I know it doesn't make up for invading your room. You didn't invade it. I still interrupted your day. He offered one last grateful smile. I hope your father recovers quickly. Then he left. The room became quiet again. Parker looked toward the folded piece of paper. For several seconds, he simply stared at it before reaching over and opening it. The handwriting was neat and steady. I'm sorry for taking over your room. And thank you for letting me rest. There was no phone number, no last name, no attempt to continue the conversation. Only a sincere apology from someone who believed they would never meet him again. Parker folded the note carefully. Instead of leaving it on the table or throwing it away, he slipped it inside his leather wallet. Even he wasn't sure why. Perhaps because genuine kindness had become surprisingly rare. Or perhaps because the stranger's quiet gratitude had somehow made one of the longest days of his life feel just a little lighter. A few hours later, Ethan Brooks was transferred safely to his recovery room. When his father finally woke up, Parker remained beside the bed through the evening, answering nurses' questions and making sure Ethan had everything he needed. You should go home, Ethan said weakly. I'm fine. You've been sitting here all day. I know. Ethan studied his son's tired face for a moment. You look different. Different. You smiled. Parker looked genuinely confused. When? I don't know. Ethan chuckled softly despite his exhaustion. But I know my own son. Parker dismissed the comment with a shake of his head, though he found himself thinking about it later while driving home. Over the following weeks, life gradually returned to normal. Ethan recovered well and began cardiac rehabilitation. Parker buried himself in meetings, hotel development plans, investor presentations, and endless business travel. Yet every now and then, during an ordinary workday, his hand would reach into his wallet while searching for a business card. His fingers would brush against the folded note. Each time, he paused for a second before closing the wallet again. He never told anyone about the stranger in the hospital. He didn't even know why he kept thinking about him. Perhaps because there had been something strangely peaceful about seeing a completely exhausted man finally allow himself to rest. 2 months later, Parker arrived at the luxury Grand Hotel for an important meeting with several international investors interested in partnering with his boutique hotel company. An assistant escorted him to an elegant private dining room reserved exclusively for the meeting. As conversations began around the table, the door opened quietly. A hotel supervisor entered carrying a tray of freshly brewed coffee. Parker looked up instinctively. The supervisor froze. Owen recognized him immediately. For a brief second, neither man spoke. Then Parker smiled, as though no time had passed at all. I believe, he said warmly, you still owe me 1 cup of coffee. Owen stared at Parker for a second before recovering his professional composure. I suppose you do. One of the investors glanced between them with mild curiosity, but Parker simply smiled and accepted the cup of coffee Owen placed in front of him. Thank you. You're welcome, sir. The formal tone almost made Parker laugh. By the time the business lunch ended an hour later, Owen was standing near the entrance, thanking every guest for visiting the hotel. As Parker walked past, he slowed his steps. So, he said, does your shift end before midnight today? Owen smiled sheepishly. Fortunately, yes. Then I'd like to collect that coffee. Owen hesitated for only a second before nodding. I finish at 6. I'll wait in the lobby. That evening, neither of them chose an expensive restaurant. They walked to a small independent cafe a few blocks from the hotel, one recommended by Owen because, according to him, their coffee tastes better than the overpriced places. Parker laughed. I'll trust the professional. You shouldn't. Why not? You supervise restaurants. Exactly. I don't supervise coffee. Their conversation flowed far more naturally than either expected. They didn't discuss business. They didn't exchange resumes. Parker never mentioned that he co-owned a successful boutique hotel company, and Owen never cared to ask how wealthy he was. They spent their first coffee talking about favorite books, terrible movies, dream destinations, and Parker's endless business meetings. By the time they stepped outside the cafe, 2 hours had disappeared. This was nice, Owen admitted. It was. I should head home. Can I call you sometime? Owen smiled. I was wondering when you'd ask. They exchanged numbers, and one coffee quietly turned into many. Within weeks, meeting each other became part of their routine. Parker often waited outside Owen's hotel after work, while Owen happily accepted invitations to dinner or evening walks. Nothing was rushed, and neither man tried to impress the other. One Saturday, they went grocery shopping before cooking together. I should warn you, Parker admitted. I'm terrible in the kitchen. How terrible. I once burned soup. Owen laughed. You burned soup? There were vegetables involved. The evening only proved Parker had been telling the truth. He nearly ruined dinner before Owen gently took over, leaving Parker in charge of washing dishes instead. I contributed. You created extra work. I created character. You created dirty bowls. A few weeks later, Parker managed to get lost in a weekend market after wandering into a bookstore. Owen eventually found him waiting beside the wrong fountain, completely unapologetic. I bought you something, Parker said, handing him a paper bag. Inside was a first edition copy of a novel Owen had casually mentioned weeks before. You remembered. You sounded disappointed when you couldn't find it. Owen smiled, realizing the gift itself mattered less than the fact Parker had been paying attention. As summer turned into autumn, their lives blended together naturally. Some evenings they cooked, others they ordered pizza after Parker's latest culinary disaster. They watched old movies, wandered through bookstores, explored weekend markets, and took long walks after work, discovering that the simplest moments were becoming their favorites. Owen always checked whether restaurant staff had eaten before ending his own shift. He remembered birthdays without using reminders. He thanked cashiers by name after reading their name tags. He always carried painkillers because one of his coworkers suffered frequent migraines. Kindness wasn't something Owen performed. It was simply the way he lived. Owen noticed things too. Parker always listened without interrupting. He treated waiters exactly the same way he treated investors. He never checked his phone during conversations. He laughed at himself whenever he made mistakes instead of blaming someone else. Most surprisingly, he never used his wealth to solve problems. If Owen suggested splitting the dinner bill, Parker simply agreed. If Owen wanted to choose the restaurant, Parker never objected. There was no need to impress each other. One rainy evening, they found themselves sitting beneath the covered terrace outside Owen's apartment after sharing takeout noodles. The rain fell quietly across the empty street. Neither man spoke for several minutes. Finally, Owen broke the silence. There was someone before. Parker looked at him, but didn't interrupt. His name was Daniel. Owen smiled sadly. We were together for almost 5 years. He took a slow breath. We were supposed to get married. Parker remained completely still. 3 years ago, Owen continued quietly. He was driving home from work. The rest of the sentence caught in his throat. There was an accident. Silence settled between them again. I always thought the funeral would be the hardest part. He looked down at his hands. It wasn't. What was? Waking up the next morning. His voice had become almost a whisper. And realizing no one would ever be waiting beside me again. Parker felt his chest tighten. There were countless comforting phrases he could have offered. Time heals. He would want you to be happy. Everything happens for a reason. But none of them felt true. So he said nothing. He simply moved a little closer until their shoulders almost touched. Minutes passed. The rain continued falling. Finally, Owen slowly reached over and took Parker's hand. Parker gently held it back. Neither man looked at the other. Neither spoke another word. For the first time in 3 years, Owen realized that silence didn't always have to feel lonely. The rain-soaked evening became a quiet turning point neither Owen nor Parker tried to define. Nothing changed overnight, yet everything felt different afterward. Their conversations grew more honest. Their silences became more comfortable. They no longer looked for reasons to spend time together, because they had quietly become part of each other's routines. On weekdays, Parker often picked Owen up after late shifts. They would stop at a grocery store, debate over what to cook, and end up laughing because Parker inevitably forgot something on a shopping list. You had one job. Owen sighed one evening as they stood in the kitchen. I remember the pasta. You forgot the pasta sauce. We can improvise. You also forgot the cheese. I was focused. On what? The dessert. Owen opened the shopping bag and pulled out 2 chocolate cakes. You bought 2. I couldn't decide. You realize this means we have to go back. Parker shrugged with complete sincerity. Or we could just eat cake. Owen tried to look disappointed, but he failed within seconds. You are impossible. And yet you keep inviting me over. That might be my greatest mistake. Your greatest mistake was walking into the wrong hospital room. Owen laughed. I suppose you're right. Ordinary evenings like that became their favorite memories. They wandered through bookstores without buying anything, explored weekend markets, argued playfully about old movies, and spent lazy Sunday mornings drinking coffee on Parker's balcony while the city slowly woke beneath them. The relationship never felt rushed because neither man expected perfection from the other. One afternoon, Parker insisted on assembling a bookshelf he had ordered online. It comes with instructions, he said confidently. 2 hours later, the shelf leaned noticeably to one side. Owen folded his arms. Is it supposed to look like that? It has personality. It has gravity. I may have used the wrong screws. You think? Parker scratched the back of his neck. I skipped page 3. You skipped half the manual. I believe in myself. And now, I believe in professionals. By sunset, Owen had quietly rebuilt the entire bookshelf while Parker handed him tools and accepted relentless teasing. I own hotels, Parker muttered, and yet an instruction manual defeated you. I negotiate million-dollar contracts. But tiny wooden pegs are your greatest enemy. I don't appreciate this attack. You'll survive. Parker smiled as he watched Owen tighten the final screw. I probably will. Months earlier, Parker would have felt embarrassed admitting he couldn't do something simple. Around Owen, pretending seemed unnecessary. Meanwhile, Owen noticed changes within himself that were harder to ignore. He no longer dreaded going home after work. He caught himself smiling while reading Parker's messages. Even Mason noticed. One busy afternoon at the hotel, Mason leaned against the service station and watched Owen checking reservations. You've become suspicious. Owen didn't even look up. That's an interesting greeting. You smile now. I've always smiled. No. Mason shook his head dramatically. You used to smile at guests because they were paying customers. And now, you smile at your phone. Owen finally looked up. I don't. You literally just did. I was reading a message. Exactly. Mason lowered his voice. Who is he? Owen sighed, knowing resistance was pointless. His name is Parker. The hospital guy. You remember that? You accidentally fell asleep in a stranger's private room. Mason grinned. That's unforgettable. Owen couldn't argue. It started with coffee. And then another coffee. And dinner. And apparently, I now spend half my weekends with him. Mason crossed his arms with exaggerated satisfaction. I've waited 3 years to hear you say something like that. Owen's smile faded into something quieter. I wasn't looking for this. I know, but maybe that's why I found you. The words stayed with Owen long after the conversation ended. Several weeks later, Parker invited Owen to have dinner with Ethan, who had recovered enough to return home. I should warn you, Parker said while driving over. My father asks a lot of questions. I supervise luxury restaurant service. I've handled demanding guests. You've never met my father. I'm beginning to worry. You should. Ethan welcomed Owen with surprising warmth. So you're the young man from the hospital. Owen blinked. Parker told you? He told me someone accidentally stole his sofa. Pagasight. I knew this would happen. Ethan laughed softly. I've heard that story at least 6 times. I did not tell it 6 times. 5, perhaps. Dinner felt warm and effortless. Ethan asked Owen about his career and listened with genuine interest as Owen described mentoring younger employees. You enjoy helping people grow, Ethan said. I do. Most managers only care about results. Owen smiled. People perform better when they know someone believes in them. Ethan glanced at Parker before looking back at Owen. I think you've done the same for my son. Pagasite. Dad, I'm serious, Ethan replied. I haven't seen you this happy in years. He turned to Owen with a gentle smile. Thank you. Owen looked surprised. I don't think I've done anything extraordinary. You didn't have to, Ethan said. You simply reminded him that life is better when it isn't lived alone. Later, while Owen helped clear the dishes, Parker quietly admitted, he's right. You've changed my life. Owen smiled. And you've changed mine. That evening, during their usual walk along the riverside, Parker suddenly stopped. I've been wanting to tell you something. Owen waited patiently. I stopped believing lasting love was possible a long time ago. My parents taught me what an unhappy marriage looked like, and I promised myself I'd never settle for that. He looked at Owen with quiet certainty. But somewhere between coffee, dinners, and all those ordinary days, I fell in love with you. Before he could say anything else, Owen stepped forward and kissed him. When they finally pulled apart, Parker laughed softly. Should I take that as a yes? Owen smiled. I thought the kiss answered that. It definitely helped. I love you too. Hand in hand, they continued their walk, no longer wondering where the relationship might lead because they had already chosen to walk that path together. As the months passed, their love settled into something steady and natural. Being with Parker no longer felt like an unexpected chapter in Owen's life. It simply felt like home. Life together wasn't perfect, but it never needed to be. Parker still forgot grocery lists, trusted GPS too much, and somehow managed to lose every battle with flat-pack furniture. Owen still worked longer than he should, and occasionally found old grief creeping back in quiet moments. The difference was that neither of them faced those moments alone anymore. Their first holiday together was spent at Ethan's house, where Mason insisted on inspecting the man who stole Owen. I didn't steal him, Parker protested. Exactly what a thief would say, Mason replied, making everyone laugh. The evening was filled with teasing, old family stories, and easy conversation. Watching Owen move comfortably through the kitchen and hearing laughter echo through the house, Parker realized it felt warmer than any holiday he remembered growing up. While helping with the dishes, Parker quietly admitted, I like this. Washing dishes? No. Having. This. Owen smiled, understanding he meant the family they had slowly built together. So do I. By Christmas, Parker's apartment had transformed into a real home. Owen helped decorate the tree. Ethan contributed treasured ornaments from Parker's childhood, and Parker jokingly complained the tree leaned too far to one side. It has character, Owen insisted. You said that about my bookshelf. And I was right. Parker laughed and wrapped an arm around him. I never thought this place could feel like home. It just needed people, Owen replied. Good memories. And someone to tolerate your terrible cooking. Their relationship continued to grow through birthdays, quiet weekends, dinners with Ethan, and Mason's frequent surprise visits. Before long, Owen had a spare key and a jacket permanently at Parker's apartment. Parker always stocked Owen's favorite coffee. Ethan called Owen just to ask restaurant recommendations, and even Mason reluctantly admitted that Parker had become annoyingly easy to like. Then came the opportunity that threatened the balance they had built. Parker's company was preparing to open its newest boutique hotel, the most ambitious project he had ever led. It was small, elegant, and service-focused, exactly the type of property where Owen's skill would shine. After weeks of watching Owen handle pressure, staff, guests, and impossible schedules with calm precision, Parker became certain of one thing. Owen was ready for more. One evening, after dinner at Parker's apartment, he placed a folder on the table. Owen looked at it carefully. What's this? An offer. For what? Operations director at the new hotel. Owen's expression changed, not with excitement, but caution. Parker, before you say anything, listen. This isn't charity. It isn't a romantic gesture. You're qualified. More than qualified. You've managed high-pressure service teams for years. You understand staff better than most executives I know. You could run operations better than anyone I've interviewed. Owen opened the folder and scanned the details. The salary was generous. The title was impressive. The role was exactly the kind of step he had once dreamed of taking. That made it worse. He closed the folder slowly. I can't accept this. Parker frowned. Why? Because I love you. That doesn't make sense. It does to me. Owen stood and walked toward the window, needing space before emotion sharpened his words. If I take this job, people won't say I earned it. They'll say I got it because I'm sleeping with the owner. Parker rose from his chair. People will always talk. That doesn't mean I have to hand them the story. You think I would let anyone disrespect you? This isn't about you defending me. Then what is it about? It's about me being able to look at my career and know it belongs to me. The words landed harder than Parker expected. I know it belongs to you. You know that. I know that. But the staff won't. The other candidates won't. The industry won't. Every mistake I make will become proof I didn't deserve the position. Every success will look like something you gave me. Parker's jaw tightened, not from anger, but from hurt. I wasn't trying to buy your future. I know. Then why does it feel like you're punishing me for believing in you? Owen turned back, his face tired and pained. Because you're hearing refusal as rejection. And what am I supposed to hear? That I need you to love me without making my path easier. Neither of them shouted. That almost made it hurt more. The room remained calm, controlled, and full of words neither man wanted to regret. Parker picked up the folder. I only wanted to give you what you deserve. Owen's voice softened. I know, but if you give it to me, I'll spend years proving I didn't just receive it. That night, Owen went home alone. They did not break up. They did not stop loving each other. But for several days, their messages became careful, shorter than usual, stripped of the easy warmth that normally filled them. Parker buried himself in work, though every meeting felt heavier. Owen threw himself into hotel operations, but Mason noticed the change immediately. You two fought. Owen sighed. We disagreed. That's adult language for fought. He offered me a director position. Mason's eyebrows rose. And you said no? I had to. Mason studied him for a long moment. You know, most people would call you insane. Are you one of them? No. That answer surprised Owen. Mason leaned against the counter. You've spent years building your name from the ground up. If you take that job now, even if you deserve it, people will make Parker the explanation. Exactly. But don't make him the villain either. Owen looked down. I'm not. He loves you. He just needs to learn that support doesn't always mean opening a door with his own key. That sentence stayed with Owen. It stayed with Parker too, though from a different direction. Ethan was the one who finally forced him to stop defending his own good intentions. You wanted to help, Ethan said during lunch. I did. But did you ask what kind of help Owen wanted? Parker looked away. He deserves that role. Perhaps. But he also deserves the dignity of reaching it in a way that doesn't make him doubt how others see him. I wasn't trying to take that from him. I know. But love can become control when we decide our solution is the best one. Parker said nothing. Ethan's voice softened. Your mother and I made many mistakes. One of them was believing comfort could replace respect. That evening, Parker went to Owen's apartment. When Owen opened the door, both men stood quietly for a moment. Then Parker said, You were right. Owen's guarded expression eased, but he didn't interrupt. I confuse believing in you with deciding for you. I still think you deserve the position, but it shouldn't come from me. Not like that. Owen swallowed. Thank you. I withdrew the offer. Owen's eyes lowered briefly. I know that wasn't easy. It was necessary. Parker reached into his coat and handed him another envelope. This is not a job offer. It's information about an executive training program run by the National Hospitality Association. Independent admissions. Outside evaluators. No influence from my company. Owen took it carefully. I didn't call anyone. I didn't recommend you privately. I only thought you should know it exists. Owen read the first page, then looked up. You really didn't interfere? I promise. The silence between them finally softened. Owen stepped closer and wrapped his arms around Parker. I never wanted to push you away. Parker held him tightly. I know. I just needed my work to remain mine. And I needed to learn how to stand beside you without stepping in front of you. That was how the conflict ended. Not with a grand apology, but with understanding that changed them both. Owen applied to the program on his own. He wrote his own essays, gathered his own references, attended every interview, and passed each evaluation without Parker making a single call. Months later, when the final acceptance letter arrived, Owen opened it with trembling hands. He had been selected, not by Parker, not because of love, because he was ready. Parker was the person he called first. When Parker arrived, Owen didn't say anything. He simply handed him the letter, and Parker read it twice before pulling him into a fierce embrace. You did it. Owen laughed against his shoulder, overwhelmed and breathless. I did. Several months after that, another letter came. A new boutique hotel owned by a different company had selected Owen Carter as its general manager. Parker stared at the offer, then at Owen, pride shining clearly across his face. You were right, he whispered. Owen shook his head and held him closer. No, he said softly. We were. 1 year later, Owen stood in the lobby of the boutique hotel he now managed, welcoming guests to its official opening. The journey had not been easy. Months of staff training, endless inspections, last-minute problems, and sleepless nights had finally led to this morning. As the ribbon was cut and applause filled the lobby, industry professionals praised the hotel's thoughtful service, and several executives congratulated Owen personally for building such a strong team in such a short time. Across the room, Parker watched quietly. He wasn't listed among the investors. His company's name appeared nowhere in the program. He stood near the back with Ethan and Mason, applauding more enthusiastically than anyone else. Mason nudged him with a grin. You look like a proud husband already. Parker smiled. I'm working toward that. After the ceremony ended, Owen finally escaped the crowd and found the three men waiting for him. Ethan hugged him first. I knew you'd get here. Thank you. No, Ethan replied warmly. You earned this. Mason pulled him into another hug. I hate admitting it, but you're officially too successful to complain about your old manager's schedule. I'll still complain. Good. I'd be worried if you stopped. Finally, Owen walked toward Parker. Neither of them cared that people were watching. Parker wrapped his arms around him and whispered, I'm proud of you. Owen smiled against his shoulder. I know. That evening, after the celebrations ended, Parker suggested one more stop before going home. I want to show you something. 30 minutes later, Owen looked through the car window and laughed in disbelief. The hospital? Parker nodded. I think we should visit. They walked through the familiar entrance together. Ethan had already arranged a small thank you gift for the cardiac team a few weeks earlier, but Parker wanted to personally thank several nurses who still remembered him. One nurse recognized them immediately. Mr. Sullivan, your father looks wonderful these days. He does. And she looked toward Owen before smiling brightly. You're the gentleman who accidentally fell asleep in the VIP lounge. Owen covered his face with one hand. I was hoping everyone had forgotten. We haven't. She laughed kindly. It became one of our favorite stories. After thanking the staff, Parker led Owen down the same hallway they had walked nearly 2 years earlier. The VIP family lounge looked almost unchanged. The same soft lighting, the same coffee table, the same sofa. Owen stepped inside slowly before shaking his head with a smile. I still can't believe everything started because I opened the wrong door. Parker looked at him for a long moment. Neither can I. They sat together on the familiar sofa. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Parker reached into his wallet. I've been carrying something. He removed an old folded piece of paper, worn slightly at the edges after nearly 2 years. Owen recognized it immediately. You kept it. Every day. He carefully unfolded it. Inside rested a simple platinum ring. Owen stared silently, emotion filling his eyes before Parker had even spoken. I thought about buying an expensive ring. Parker smiled softly, but this felt more honest. He held Owen's hand. The night we met, you thought you had interrupted the worst day of my life. I almost did. No. Parker shook his head. You became the best part of it. His voice remained calm, though his eyes betrayed everything he was feeling. You taught me that love isn't about solving someone's problems. He smiled gently. It's about choosing to stay. Owen's vision blurred with tears. You helped me believe that loving again wasn't betraying the person I lost. Parker slowly slipped off the sofa and knelt in front of him. Owen Carter. He took a steady breath. Will you marry me? Owen laughed through tears, unable to speak immediately. Instead, he nodded several times before finally finding his voice. Yes. Another laugh escaped him. Yes, of course I will. Parker slid the ring onto his finger before Owen pulled him into a kiss that felt both joyful and wonderfully familiar. Months later, surrounded by family, friends, coworkers, and the people who had watched their relationship grow, they celebrated a small wedding. There were no extravagant decorations, no celebrity guests, no grand ballroom, just people who genuinely loved them. Ethan stood proudly beside Parker, his eyes shining throughout the ceremony. Mason somehow managed to make everyone laugh during his toast. I always knew Owen deserved someone wonderful, he said. I just didn't expect that person to be the guy whose private hospital room he accidentally invaded. The room erupted with laughter. Even Owen couldn't stop smiling. When the ceremony ended, Parker and Owen shared their first dance as husbands, surrounded by applause from everyone who had become part of their story. A few weeks later, they returned to the hospital one last time. Not because anyone was sick, simply because they wanted to thank the doctors and nurses who had unknowingly witnessed the beginning of everything. As they walked toward the parking lot, Owen looked back at the building. The first time I came here, he said, smiling, I walked into the wrong room. Parker gently squeezed his hand. Maybe. He looked at Owen with the same quiet warmth he had carried since that day. But you found the right person. They reached the car together. This time, no one was exhausted. No one was grieving. No one was afraid of tomorrow. They climbed into the same car, not because of an accident or a misunderstanding, but because they had chosen the same destination. On the drive home, Owen glanced at Parker. So, I've been thinking, that usually worries me. We should adopt a dog. Parker laughed. I knew this conversation was coming. A golden retriever. Why not a rescue dog? Owen smiled. I like that even better. And after that, we finally take that trip to Italy you've been talking about. And after Italy? Owen intertwined their fingers across the center console. We keep coming home together. Parker smiled as the city lights stretched ahead of them. I like that plan. So do I. The road ahead held ordinary mornings, shared dinners, unexpected laughter, difficult days, quiet victories, and years neither of them could predict. But they no longer feared what the future might bring, because home was never a place they happened to find. It was something they chose every single day in each other. And that's where Owen and Parker's journey comes to a close. Not with a grand miracle, but with two people choosing each other day after day through love, trust, and respect. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. See you in the next story.